So welcome and salam alaikum for all our Muslim colleagues, brothers and sisters that are joining us. Welcome to everyone that is joining this virtual online conference. This conference was put together in a very short period of time as a direct result of the rise in racism, Islamophobia, the rise of nationalism in the COVID-19 period. Our hope is to stimulate a conversation, possibly some material that comes out of this comparatively, as well as looking at the specific cases. We already know that the already existing gaps covering and impacting communities of color has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 here in the United States, in Europe, as well as other places around the world. So racism does not take day off. It's not susceptible to quarantine. It actually continues to be with us, if anything, intensify. So hopefully we're going to have a number of presentations covering various regions. We have a number of good papers on India. It has been possibly one of the most intense cases of Islamophobic racist discourse as a result of COVID-19. So our first speaker is Farhan Mujahid Chak. He's associate professor from Qatar University. His paper is Hindutva, Islamophobia, Kashmir, and the coronavirus. Again, we welcome him. He's from Qatar University. He's participated in a number of conferences on Islamophobia that we organized here in Berkeley, as well as in France and in Istanbul. So he's part of our scholarly network that works in the field of Islamophobia. So Farhan, take it. And you could turn your camera on, and also if you need to share a presentation, you will be able to do so. Okay. Unmuted. Farhan, are you with us?
Yes, I'm there. Can you see me?
No, let's see. No, we don't see you yet.
Okay. I don't have the controls to turn on my video.
Okay, let's see if we're able to do that from here. Let's see. No, this is... You could begin talking, and I'll see if we're able to figure out the tech side from the picture in here.
Absolutely. All right. First of all, thank you very much, Hatem. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be here. A special thank you and gratitude to you, Hatem, for pioneering work, really relentless, in fact, that you've done on Islamophobia, and tirelessly have kind of raised this issue over the last several years. So I just wanted to express my gratitude towards that. Barakallahu feek, Khalaziz. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
On the unique convergence of three interrelated developments, right?
Now we see you.
You can see me? All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, brother. So my brief talk today wants to touch on the unique convergence of three developments. First, the rise of Hindutva fascism, particularly in regards to Islamophobia. Its real entire core is so vehemently anti-Islamic, its entire narrative, its entire genesis, in fact. Talk about that. Talk about the manner in which the coronavirus pandemic has prevented a cover of sorts for the actions of Hindutva extremists, right? And this is also occurring amidst a crippling of the Indian economy. Now, this crippling is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. We can say right now almost 23 Indian billionaires are currently have absconded India. They are nowhere to be seen. And this is, a lot of these facts are not coming out, but India is in financial dire straits, which unfortunately also make the likelihood of war even stronger. But I just wanted to include that in the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. And then lastly, the rolling back of civil liberties, the erosion of democracy, you can say, of privacy, individual rights. You know, one commentator put it that taking into consideration post 9/11 erosion of civil liberties, you know, that was a honeymoon compared to what we're going to be witnessing now. So then what I do in my research is I look at these three developments, and then I look at it through the prism of the Indian occupation of Kashmir. How are these three developments exacerbating, heightening the Indian occupation of Kashmir, and where are we now with that? So, and here we come to what the fascists in India, what the Hindutva Islamophobes are speaking of, quite openly for that matter, is the final solution. And these words are not mine. These are words that they have openly almost bragged about. They have spoken of this kind of final solution in something that was, of course, done in, you know, much before, but they've taken this thinking from the Nazis. And this is what these fanatics want once and for all to deal with what they refer to as the Kashmir problem. They haven't been able to do it in the last 72 years. And now, because of these unique circumstances, the fanaticism of the Hindutva right taking power, because the cover of the coronavirus, and that's rationalizing the drawback of the civil liberties and individual rights and law for that matter, it's thrown right out the window. Just the other day, the Supreme Court of India did not think it was important enough for the people of Kashmir to have internet. Like, imagine, they did not think this is the longest, you know, shutdown in human history of this sort, and not enough is being said about it. But so let's look at these things and see what is their objective. Well, their objectives are also threefold. It is really, and without exaggeration, they had planned a genocide, ethnic cleansing, and demographic flooding. Now, the genocide plan was kind of detailed and spoke of by Genocide Watch. They had issued a report on what they foresaw happening in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Because of the massive internationalization of the conflict, it kind of frightened India. And India right now is truly a frightened country, both its own people and even, most of all, the bullies that are running this fanatical government. The bully is scared more than anybody else, which makes them having weapons all the more kind of frightening for the rest of the world. But they truly are in a panic mode because they did not expect that kind of internationalization and ongoing. So, but that was their master plan. And even now today, the latest developments are ongoing right now are at least 5 search and cordon operations, 4 in the district of Pulwama, 1 in Kulgam, and these are just the ones that have been verified. I actually personally think it's double this amount. So you have this chaotic situation on the ground. It's actually a blessing, to be honest, that the Kashmiris are inside, because this has prevented them from mass killings. But this is the plan. This is the direction on where Kashmir is going. Now, how do we respond to this? And how do we recognize some of the tactics that the Hindutva fanatics are using? Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to go back and draw back some of their myths. Challenge the basic myths that they have that kind of form their ideological fountainhead, which blame Muslims from day one of forcibly converting people to Islam. And I think the easiest response to that is that Muslims, give or take, had more than 1,000 years of rulership over various parts of what is called today India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, etc., these areas that were never won, by the way. But Muslims ruled, and the area that today is known as India has always had only a minority of Muslims. So the biggest evidence against the forcible conversion of Indians to Islam is the fact that the majority of them did not accept it. The majority of them are not Muslims. Even after 1,000 years of Muslim civilization, believe me, what happened to the Muslims in Spain after they lost political power, within 2-3 generations, the entire Muslim population was gone, right? Or went underground. So if you do comparisons in other societies with what has happened to large Muslim populations after Muslim political rule had vanished, you see something very obvious as the disappearance of Islam. Now, within Indian occupied Kashmir, this is their objective, but they're having great difficulty doing that. So one of the tricks was to convince their own people that this was their own land, that these Muslims came from. So I believe a lot of our work needs to challenge that narrative, challenge the fact that when Muhammad bin Qasim came to the area that was called Sindh, the people there were not Hindu. The majority of the people there were Buddhist. So facts like this that are often kind of glossed over and denied need to be challenged. I think that's on the academic, intellectual level to kind of unravel the Hindutva myth. And this kind of pulls the rug out from underneath the fanatics that say the same thing. And this is very compelling for them, that these Muslims came from outside, forcibly made us Muslim, and now they've cut our country away, and now they want to do it again. So this is the simplistic and absolutely false history that we need to confront on the Hindutva level. And then also expose the reality that, look, even the word India itself, it's a British word, right? What were the people called in these regions themselves? There's more than 13 official languages in Pakistan, just for that matter, and there's at least 4 in Kashmir, of course, Kashmiri being the main one. But nonetheless, the point is that to challenge the simplistic history that not only Hindutva fanatics, but also, I'm afraid, Indian intellectuals have also pushed forward. And it's a very interesting kind of unique love and hate type of narrative. On the one side, they mock the fact that the people are originally, according to their mythology, Hindu, and that they left and that they should return. But at the same time, then they mock them for denying or saying that, hey, look, we had our own identity. Balochi or Pashto or Kashmiri or Saraiki or Shinko or any of the languages in Pakistan or in Kashmir, none of which are spoken in India. So that's denied. And even in many South Asian institutes, the reality of the multiplicity of identities is denied. So we need to kind of confront that. We need to talk about that more and argue about that and explore that, because that kind of pulls the rug under, as I said before, from the Hindutva myth. Now, that's the one part, I think, to challenge their narrative. Also, exposing the crimes. For a long time, Indian intelligentsia, both, I'm saying from the Congress perspective and even from the fanatical right, had denied in the same breath Kashmiri identity and almost have force-fed Kashmiris a false history. Now, Kashmiris are trying to push back now, write their own history, talk about their own origins, the language for that matter, and the origins of the language that doesn't have similarity to other languages in the region. So pushing back in this way, exposing the way that the narrative has been force-fed on the people, this is an important part of resistance, taking ownership of your own narrative and recognizing what Hindutva and its proponents do. And I think one of the 3 things that I wanted to highlight in what they do is the weaponization of pluralism. And I've spoken about this in a few different places, but this is critical. They talk a language of universalism and plurality, but only through which they pummel any kind of voice of divergence or any kind of voice that wants to recognize its own individuality. So it's a very sinister and cynical use of pluralism. And secondly, there is the majoritarian impulse, and this comes to the kind of the drawback of civil liberties. This majoritarian impulse kind of rubbishes away all laws, all respect for constitutionalism, or whatever precedent was set before, as I had mentioned about withdrawing the domicile law, for, as a matter of fact, and that's just been passed to allow for this demographic flooding in Kashmir, and so many other instances like the withdrawing of Article 370. So in breaking the law, but insisting that the victims of law go through the courts, file court cases, and get dragged on for years. This is also the use of the law to kind of not protect the minorities, but to subjugate. And then thirdly, what I call the instrumentalization of rhetoric of free speech, rhetoric of freedom of expression, but in reality, particularly when Muslim communities try to utilize free speech, utilize this right of freedom of expression, especially when they're trying to foreground their faith and their values, that's seen as incitement. And so using free speech in this particular situation for Kashmiris, particularly, is incitement. And you can see this with this pregnant young girl that was arrested and put in prison under all kinds of ridiculous accusations, Ms. Zargar, for speaking about the atrocities being committed in Indian-occupied Kashmir. So we have this unique convergence, this unfortunately coming to what I would call like the final innings. And the situation is very grave. And at every opportunity, we need to highlight what's happening. And I think for a final point, what I wanted to talk about was one of the most neglected aspects of Islamophobia is, and what Islamophobia really aims to do, is deny Muslims the opportunity to normalize and humanize themselves. That's what it viciously kind of hates. It does not want to see a friendly, a loving, your neighbor, your friend, as a normalized everyday Muslim. It has to keep it as something wicked and hidden. And unfortunately, one of the effects of this type of massive Islamophobic propaganda is internally within the Muslim community. So internal Islamophobia within Muslim communities that produces one of the most kind of jarring aspects of this double, what, you know, W. Du Bois talked about double consciousness. They are one of the worst when it comes to a sense of shame and also a resentment at their fellow believers for foregrounding the faith or talking about the faith. So we have to resist this as well. And I actually commend Kashmiris for doing this. They are bravely resisting any attempt at diminishing their faith or their expression of their faith and kind of tying it towards terrorism. And that has actually completely failed. But those are my overall perspectives and views when it comes to how Hindutva is playing with the pandemic to kind of cripple Kashmiri society and what we should be wary of, what we should be concerned with. At the end, the options for India now are, how far will they go? Are they willing? I believe they were, but with the world's eye completely on them, they're going to be hesitant, they're going to be frightened. And that's why we need to keep that microscope there. You know, they say that, you know, the devil likes the shadows, drag them into the light, and they change their behavior. So we need to, wherever Islamophobia is raising its ugly head, we need to drag them out of the dark into the light and watch them scatter. Thank you very much, Hatem. Those were my brief comments, and I apologize if I went over the time.
No, thank you, Farhan. It's really good to have you. And, you know, I know you already broke your fast, so enjoy whatever the rest of the evening.